This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, Heather, ho there. It's Jeff Cutter-Rabbit welcoming you to another Sports Catastrophe birthday boy. And the birthday boy for today, November the 25th, is a legendary quarterback who played 13 years in the NFL as quarterback. And he played college football for a very good school. And he spent 11 years with the Eagles before spending time with two other teams. But his number was retired by the Eagles in 2013. He was the quarterback to lead Philadelphia out of the doldrums, as they say. And that's what happens in a lot of things. But regardless of that, he is a legendary Philadelphia quarterback. His name is Donovan McNabb, who's now 48 years old. McNabb was born and raised in Chicago. He looked pretty impressive. He actually played basketball with future NBA member of the Celtics and Heat, Antoine Walker. McNabb was approached by recruiters for a lot of colleges. But the fact of the matter was that he actually only had two schools that were willing to give him his spot at quarterback, Syracuse and Nebraska. Nebraska had their own quarterbacks situation, primarily with the fact that they had Brooke Bellinger and touchdown Tommy Frazier. Like, he wanted to go to Nebraska because he liked being coached by Tom Osborne. However, he leaned towards Syracuse, the other school that gave him a chance to be quarterback, because he wanted to be a competent pocket passer, and Nebraska doesn't really do that. And they have a broadcast journalism program. So he went to Syracuse. And how many good quarterbacks went to Syracuse other than McNabb? Don McPherson? Give me a break. Anyway, in 94, he would redshirt, meaning he would lose a year. He would practice with the team, but he wouldn't play in any action. He was ineligible to play. So he decided to redshirt, and then he would have, without losing his eligibility, he had 4 more years. Anyway, as a freshman, he actually threw a 96-yard touchdown to West Virginia, against West Virginia. So he's named the Big East Conference Rookie of the Year. And in junior, he almost had 3,000 yards of total offense to set a school record. As a senior, Syracuse would face Florida in the Orange Bowl, but lost. And then Syracuse almost beat Tennessee, who were the 1998-99 champion. He put up 22 touchdown passes to tie the single-season record set by Don McPherson. McNabb also could run the ball and had 8 touchdown runs. And for one season, he was teammates with Marvin Harrison, the future great Colt wide receiver. He was named the Big East Offensive Player of the Decade for the 90s, despite the fact that it was late in the 90s. He was a finalist for the Heisman Trophy, but didn't get it. He even was a walk-on for the Syracuse basketball team for a couple years under Jim Boeheim. He was a reserve. He was on the 96 squad that saw Syracuse lose to Kentucky in the championship game. Anyway, so yeah, his 4 seasons with Syracuse, over 8,300 passing yards, 77 touchdowns, 26 interceptions. He still holds the Syracuse record for total yards per game, passing efficiency, and yards per attempt. In basketball, he played 24 games for the Syracuse squad, not really scoring a lot of points. So anyway, he was highly sought after as quarterback and all of that. So anyway, Cleveland had the first pick because they were coming back to the NFL, and Tim Couch was their main ordained guy. So now Philly was up on the clock for number 2 pick, and there were rumors circulating that they wanted Ricky Williams, the running back from Texas, and there were a lot of Eagles fans who wanted Ricky Williams. However, the Eagles selected Donovan McNabb second overall, and the fans were going nuts, angry that the Eagles would give up such a draft pick from Donovan McNabb when they could have had Ricky Williams. Anyhow, 5 quarterbacks were named in the first 12 picks of the 99 draft, saying it was one of the best quarterback drafts since 1983. He was the second of 5 quarterbacks. Tim Couch would struggle with Cleveland and was cheered out of Cleveland when he got hurt. Achilles Smith and Cade McNown were out of the NFL by 2002, so only 3 years. Achilles Smith, terrible with Cincy, and he had a 9 on the Wonder Leg. Cade McNown was a bust for the Bears coming out of UCLA. Achilles Smith came out of Oregon. Tim Couch came out of Kentucky. McNabb out of Syracuse. And the other quarterback, Dante Culpepper, out of UCF, had a decent career with the Vikings. He would see his first regular season action September 19th against the Bucks. His first career start was at home against Washington November 14th, going 8 for 21. But they still won the game. He was the first Eagles rookie since Brad Gable to start a quarterback, and the first rookie draft pick of the Eagles to start since John Reeves in 1972. And with McNabb's win, he was the first Eagles rookie quarterback since Mike Broglia in 1974 to win his first NFL start. He didn't throw a touchdown pass until the game against the Colts, November 21st, when he had a touchdown pass to Chad Lewis. McNabb would actually start 6 of the 7 final Eagles games. And then he became an NFL starter full-time and actually shocked a lot of people by being second in the AP MVP voting, behind only Marshall Faulk. McNabb put up 300 passing yards on primetime against the Falcons, becoming the first Eagle to throw for 300 yards since Bobby Hoying way back in 1997. He was pretty good. He had 125 rushing yards against Washington. It was the highest since Bobby Douglas, by a quarterback since Bobby Douglas of the Bears in December 1972. So it's just amazing what could happen. The Eagles would help Philly make the playoffs for the first time in 5 years when they defeated Tampa in the wild card round and then lost to the Giants in the divisional round. McNabb took part in the Pro Bowl only when Kurt Warner could not compete because of injury. So he looked pretty good. He led the Eagles in rushing with 629 yards in 2000, becoming only the third quarterback since 1970 to lead his team in rushing. And he had 6 touchdown runs and all that. In 2001, the Eagles won 11 games that year and beat the Giants twice and won the NFC East. And then they went to the divisional round against the Chicago Bears, shocking the Bears at Soldier Field, who were 13-3. And with that, he was the 4th quarterback in Eagles history to pass for 3,000 yards in consecutive seasons. Only Sonny Jurgensen, Ron Jaworski, and Randall Cunningham were the others. The Eagles went to the NFC title game, losing to the greatest show on turf St. Louis Rams, who subsequently lost to those pesky New England Patriots in the Super Bowl. McNabb would be given a 12-year, $115 million deal by the Eagles after his 3rd season, because he was in his rookie year. Unfortunately, though, McNabb suffered a broken fibula in Week 11. He did have 4 touchdown passes despite that tibia. Some say it would be a sprained ankle, but his fibula was broken and he was out for the remainder of the regular season. Somehow, in some way, the Eagles were 5-1 to finish the season, even though A.J. Feely and Coy Detmer were in at quarterback. McNabb was back in time for the playoffs against the Falcons in the divisional round. The Eagles did win the game and set themselves up against the Tampa Bay Bucks in the NFC title game, losing 27-10. A big shock, especially Tampa. There was a pick 6. Can't remember who was the guy with the pick 6. But Tampa did a pick 6 to win the game, and that was the last time the Eagles played at Veterans Stadium, as it was basically demolished. The Phillies would be moving to Citizens Bank Park, and the Eagles would be moving to Lincoln Financial Field. The Bucks had a great pass defense. And the funny thing was that the Bucks could not win a game when the temperature was colder than 30 Fahrenheit. And they did. The Bucks would win the Super Bowl with their defense. Unfortunately, McNabb, after the Eagles started 0-2, losing to Tampa and New England at their home stadium, was the subject of controversial comments by Rush Limbaugh, who actually wanted to moonlight as an ESPN reporter on Sunday Countdown, and basically said that McNabb is overrated. And I think what we have here is a little social concern in the NFL. The media has been very desirous that black quarterback do well. Of course, his words, not mine. So basically, Limbaugh was criticized, and basically he decided to resign from ESPN, thankfully. So anyway, despite the slow start to 2003 season, McNabb poured it on and helped the Eagles beat the Packers in the divisional round. That was the famous 4th and 26 game in which the Eagles had to convert a 4th and 26 to avoid losing to the Packers. And Freddie Mitchell just got across the line. So anyway, it was a huge one. And of course, the Eagles went in overtime. They hosted the NFC title game on home turf against Carolina and shockingly lost 14-3. McNabb was actually injured with separated rib coverage thanks to a sack by Mike Rucker. McNabb attempted to play through the injury but could not do it. He was 4 for 12 afterwards with 3 interceptions, meaning Coy Detmer had to come in for the fourth quarter. Kenny Stabler joined Donovan Van Ack joined Ken Stabler and Danny White as the only quarterbacks to lose 3 straight conference title games. And the first to do it while playing at home in all 3 of them. I think that, the Raiders played at least one of those 3 losses on the road. And I know for a fact that Danny White was the quarterback in 81-82 when Dallas went into San Francisco and got bit by the catch. But let's not forget that what's lost in that shuffle is that the Cowboys actually were marching down the field on their last possession and fumbled the ball away. Anyway, a lot of people said McNabb would be a massive choker and all that, and they couldn't really do anything about it. Nevertheless, McNabb was optimistic. Eagles fans probably weren't, but he helped out. After the Niners got rid of Terrell Owens and the Eagles picked him up, it helped him out. Terrell caught 14 touchdowns in only 14 games. They finally found a Pro Bowl caliber wide receiver for McNabb to throw to. They put up 13 wins, winning the NFC East by 7 games, meaning that nobody else in the NFC East was above 500 other than Philly. He almost got the Eagles' single-season record for passing touchdowns and total TDs. He was 1 short, practically because he was played sparingly in the last few games. So, McNabb against the Packers actually had a 464-yard day with 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, making him the only the second quarterback to do so with that type of performance. The first YA title in 1962. McNabb helped the Eagles beat Minnesota in the divisional round, and then Atlanta came to town trying to ruin Philly's chances for the 4th consecutive year to make the Super Bowl, much less lose it on home turf. But the joke was on anti-Eagles fans as the Eagles won over the Falcons 27-10 and got to the Super Bowl finally. Well, for the second time in franchise history, but man, it felt like an eternity. He would become the 3rd African-American quarterback to start the Super Bowl after Doug Williams in 1987 and Steve McNair in 1999. Doug Williams won that Super Bowl thanks to Timmy Smith's running, and Steve McNair was 1 yard short. So they took on my New England Patriots, but McNabb would struggle at times because the Patriots defense just had it all that. And Terrell Owens was coming back from an injury probably too soon. And McNabb had some problems and all that. He accepted blame for the defeat. And besides, McNabb got the Eagles to the Super Bowl in the first place. So the Eagles lost 24-21. It wasn't that bad. 2005, his season began in turmoil and he was on the injured reserve list. And practically Terrell Owens was getting a little bit too big for his britches, if you will. Anyway, McNabb did perform well in September because it was despite a sports hernia. Anyway, so McNabb and Owens let things happen quite well. That Owens was still on the team. Anyway, the momentum was not that great and all that. McNabb was out for the last 7 games with injury, and the Eagles finished 6-10. Not really his numbers. However, McNabb and the Eagles did start the 2006 season 4-1. And it looked pretty good. They faced the Titans in week 11, but McNabb tore the ACL in his right knee, ending his season for the 3rd time in 5 years that he had gone down with 6 or more games in the regular season. His rehab would likely last 8 to 12 months, a lot of people said. So that ended his 2006 season, and by the start of 2007, who knows? Jeff Garcia came off the bench and helped the Eagles go to 10-6 and win the NFC East somehow. They hosted the Giants in the wildcard round, beat them, but lost to the Saints in the Superdome, 27-24. McNabb came back from the ACL injury from the season opener against the Packers, but lost 16-13. McNabb had his skill and all that. He did finish with 3,324 passing yards in 14 games. So, anyway, a lot of people said that McNabb was basically done for by 2008 with the Eagles, but he stayed around and all that. And Donovan McNabb, after the Bengals and Eagles ended up a tie, said he didn't think that NFL games ended in a tie. He didn't know that was in the rule book. Well, obviously, because college, up to 1996, games could end in a tie, but they couldn't. Unfortunately, though, McNabb struggled against the Ravens, and that was when Kevin Kolb was brought in. But Kevin Kolb did Karma did hit Kolb as he threw a pick 6 that Ed Reed had to return for 108 yards. Despite that, the Eagles made the playoffs for the 7th time in 9 seasons as a starter. In the wildcard round, they shocked the Vikings on the road. And no, that was not when Brett Favre was with the team. McNabb would then help the Eagles shock the Giants in the divisional round, then gone to the NFC title game against Arizona. A lot of people figured the Eagles were going to win because Arizona keeps getting snake bit. And, it's not even freaking McNabb. They were trying to become the 4th wildcard team since 1970 to win 3 consecutive road games to play in the Super Bowl. They were down 24-6, and they actually were up 25-24, but the Cardinals won 32-25. It was close. Nevertheless, Philly was willing to do something. They picked up Jeremy Maclin from the University of Missouri in the draft to help the receiving corps of Kevin Curtis and Deshaun Jackson. McNabb actually encouraged the Eagles to sign Michael Vick to the team as a backup upon his release from prison for his dogfighting operation. McNabb actually befriended Vick years before when Vick was on a recruiting trip to Syracuse before headed to Virginia Tech. A lot of people said that, McNabb's role in Vick's signing was an act of selflessness not seen among professional athletes. Unfortunately, though, McNabb broke a rib. Despite all that, he was trying to help the Eagles out. They got to the playoffs, but they lost to Dallas in a winner-take-all for the NFC East. Philly lost the game, but still made the playoffs. They would have to go back to Dallas for the wildcard round. But it was disastrous as they Cowboys won 34-14. And McNabb, for the first time in a playoff season, actually was winless. He won at least one playoff game every playoff season. A lot of people thought that his time had come with the Eagles. And Andy Reid even said on April Fool's Day 2010 that the Eagles were going to keep McNabb in Philadelphia and make him the starter. Well, some people probably didn't take it seriously because it was April Fool's Day. But then 3 days later, the Eagles traded McNabb to Washington for a second-round pick in the 2010 draft and a conditional pick in 2011. Philly used the conditional pick to trade down and pick up Nick Foles. So anyway, McNabb would go to Washington and help him beat Dallas in the first game of the 2010 season. McNabb in week 4 would have to go to Philadelphia and play at Lincoln Financial Field, mostly because they were in the same division as those Eagles, and you have to play one game at home against your divisional rival and one on the road. McNabb posted pedestrian stats. Washington did win 17-12. The Eagles fans did give him a standing ovation, though. McNabb would sign a 5-year extension with Washington in 2010. But that same day, the Redskins were hosting Philly on Monday Night Football and got crushed 59-28. And then late in 2010, Mike Shanahan relegated McNabb to third string. He had a terrible season. He had career low in season passing rating and touchdown interception ratio, decimal 9. He actually was on pace to put up over 4,000 passing yards, which would have broken the Redskins' record. But nevertheless, he was there. Unfortunately, though, Washington decided by July 2011 to get rid of McNabb, trading him to Minnesota for a 6th-round pick in 2012. Minnesota was happy to have him. Minnesota would give him number 5. Punter Chris Kluwe agreed to give McNabb his number 5 jersey in exchange for $5,000 to his charity Kick for a Cure. McNabb to promote Kluwe's band Tripping Icarus during a press conference and an ice cream cone. Seriously? You put that in the clause, an ice cream cone? Anyone can buy you a freaking ice cream cone. Regardless, McNabb started off poorly, 1-5, and Christian Ponder was made to be the starting quarterback. McNabb decided enough was enough and wanted to leave the Vikings in December 2011. There were a lot of potential destinations, including Houston, Kansas City, and even his hometown Bears, which all 3 of those teams lost their starting quarterbacks to injury and were trying to make playoff pushes. However, the Texans signed Jake Delhomme. The Bears and Chiefs both wanted Kyle Orton, and Orton went to the Chiefs. And the Bears picked up Josh McCown. McNabb would retire from football in July 2013 in a ceremonial 1-day contract with the Eagles. So in his regular season deal, he won 98 games as the starting quarterback. I played 167 of them. He passed for 234 touchdowns, 117 interceptions. His ratio was a perfect 2 touchdowns for every interception. His rushing mark over 3,400 yards for 29 touchdowns. In the postseason, he was 9-7. He went to 7 postseasons, and in the first 6 of them, he at least won 1 playoff game. But unfortunately, just couldn't win the Super Bowl. He still owns the record for most postseason wins by a quarterback who did not win the Super Bowl with 9, tying him with Jim Kelly. That makes sense. And he holds the ignominious NFL record of being sacked 12 times in one game, tied with 2 others. He was actually the first quarterback to have more than 30 passing touchdowns and less than 10 interceptions in a season. More than 22 consecutive completions over a 2-game span. Run the ball more than 100 yards in a postseason game by a quarterback and have a 200-yard passing, 100-yard rushing game in the postseason. He holds many Eagle records. I mean, dude, what Eagles records don't he hold? Anyway, his number 5 got retired by the Eagles in 2013. Rightfully so. I mean, dude. His number 5 is retired by the Syracuse Orange. McNabb became a analyst for many things. He actually married his college sweetheart, Roxy Nurse, having 4 children. Alexis, Zaria, Donovan Jr., and Devin. Yep, Donovan Jr. I don't know if he'll play football. He's 16 now. He has a Bachelor of Science degree in speech communication from Syracuse. He's the brother-in-law of former CFL player Richard Nurse, and through this marriage, McNabb is the uncle of Darnell Nurse, who was picked by the Oilers 7th overall in the 2013 NHL draft, still plays for the Oilers, and got unfortunately whacked by Ryan Reeves this season, and given Reeves a 5-game suspension. Leaf fans are not missing Ryan Reeves at all. He's also the uncle of Kia Nurse, who plays for Los Angeles in the WNBA and part of the Canadian women's team, and of course Sarah Nurse, who is a 2-time Winter Olympian in hockey for the Canadian national women's team. He had a couple of massive jail times because of DUIs. But still, Donovan McNabb is an Eagles legend. And I bet those Eagle fans were upset that they had booed such a wonderful guy. I would be. Anyhow, I'm Jeff Diamond, a Duke.